Welcome to the 129th episode of the Flipped Learning Remixed podcast. This is the podcast where cutting-edge technology meets learning. I am your host, Troy Cockrum, and I am joined again by my co-host, Joan Brown. Hello, Joan.
Hi, Troy.
And tonight we have on the episode, we have J.D. Ferries Rowe, who's been on, I believe, 2 other times before. And JD, can you first tell us what it is that you do in education?
Sure. I'm the, I think my title this year is Chief Information Officer. I'm the head geek at Brebeuf Jesuit Preparatory School in Indianapolis, Indiana. And, you know, I buy technology. I teach teachers how to use technology. I learn from teachers and students how to use technology. Coach the debate team, teach a little bit of robots this year. If it plugs in, I've probably played around. So, and I'm realizing as I'm like on this podcast, going, "Wow, I really wore plaid on the live podcast." So sorry, everybody.
It's okay being a head geek. You can wear what you want.
So, Joan and I were, we always talk about what kind of new episodes can we come out with, and since it's still early in the school year for quite a lot of people, and I know some schools just started and some started a couple weeks ago, but a lot of teachers run into a problem when they first are early in the days of, maybe their school just went one-to-one, or maybe they opened up a BYOD program, or maybe they've got a classroom set of iPads or, Chromebooks or something like that. And it creates a new challenge as far as things like, how do you charge all these things, and how does the Wi-Fi hold up when you have 25 devices all hitting the same router and things like that, and so.
And how about the slanted desks?
Oh yes,
yeah.
Just have to bring that one up because we have that problem.
Well, we went one-to-one 4 years ago, and we jumped over the one device thing. We went one-to-one BYOT. So we, in the course of a summer, we really went from about 10 to 20% of the kids bringing a device to every single kid had a device. And we had just a ton of those, beginning of the year hiccups. Where do we put charging stations? How do we make sure the kids are not, plugged in and staring at the screen all day long? But it was great after year one, we kind of sat back with all of the teachers and did a reflection process where we're like, okay, what's working and what's not working? And furniture, the desk, was the #1 issue for the teachers. Like, we were expecting you need a new wireless or you need this, and was the teacher saying, the rows and the columns don't work in a one-to-one environment. We've got to look at new furniture. We've got to talk about what a classroom looks like with technology and how it's different than without technology. So those slanted desks, yes, they are an impediment to learning.
They're dangerous.
Especially for those iPads if they don't have that slip cover on them.
That's right.
Yeah. And we have the desks that open up, and so students forget that their Chromebook's on top of the desk, and they'll open it up, and it'll slide off the backside.
Cell phone goes flying.
Yeah. So what kind of desks, or have you seen or that you've brought in? Tables in some situations, but what kind of things have you brought in to solve that situation?
Well, we started our experiment with the we went out to Steelcase and we got some of the Steelcase. They're single. I'm drawing blanks on names already. They're Steelcase single desk units that kind of look like flying saucers on the bottom.
The Node, Node.
The Node chairs.
Yeah.
And so we started with the Node chairs, and they were popular with some of our teachers, and some of our teachers thought they looked better for an elementary school. So there was much discussion over aesthetics. We ended up during our year of discernment where we were kind of like, on one side we're mapping out what we think the ideal technology classroom should look like, and on one side we're experimenting with different technologies and sharing formats and stuff, and then on the other side we're figuring out, can we raise enough money to do kind of what we're envisioning, which is renovating every single room in the school. And the people who were designing the room went to architects and went to furniture designers, and at one point our teacher resource room had like 17 different types of desks and chairs and tables, and we started talking about like surface area, because there's a huge difference if you're, a school that's going to have a bunch of kids with MacBooks and the teachers are still going to be using a hardback book, and you want the kids to have the opportunity to take notes on paper or to collaborate. You need a bigger desk per kid than you might be used to. And so we brought all of these in. We narrowed it down to about 3 models, and then we took it to the student council and had student council come in and said, what would you want to sit in for 8 hours? What are your concerns? What are you worried about? It was actually, I think, one of the students who came up with the suggestion that instead of putting wheels on all 4 legs, which basically, is just begging for like races, we ended up wheelbarrowing. So we have wheels on 2 and then pegs on 2, so that they quickly can move into any position in the room, but they can't be used to like slide across the entire floor. And that was a student suggestion originally.
That's great.
So I think we ended up with the Learn 2 table from KI is the all-in-one we use in the smaller rooms, but most of our rooms, I want to say 8 out of 10 of our rooms are about a 2, maybe a 4 square foot surface area on one of those wheelbarrow style tables with a nice comfortable wheeled chair. And I've seen those go from the typical testing environment classroom to group work to individual work, all within the course of a single period. So we were able to maximize mobility. That was kind of our key, make the classrooms as flexible as possible.
And that is what age group?
This is high school, so this is 9 through 12. I've been doing. It's funny. My 6-year-old, my 10-year-old go to a very small private school, and we've just started talking about what technology looks like at their grade level and starting to incorporate technology. It might be the only school left in existence where I would advocate putting smartboards in is a small elementary school with 6 kids in the class. But they have, talking to them is a lot different because you've got kids who are, a little bit closer to the ground and look for different types of furniture, and that's a lot of our discussions has been in that situation has been, what is your context, and then how do you pick the furniture that's right for your context. We think there are some guidelines, like technology seems to demand that you be a little bit more flexible, but other than that, we don't necessarily have any hard and fast rules. It depends on what your environment is.
So I'm kind of looking at some of these tables and chairs you were discussing, and I'm curious about electricity. Are you advocating that everybody is charged when they get in there, and that way you're not too worried about it, or do you charge in class?
It's a lot different now than it was 4 years ago because the battery life's a lot better on devices now. Mm-hmm. So that's some of that concern's gone away. When we first started, we scoured all over the place and found American Locker Company makes a charging cabinet, and it's a self-locking locker that each student can plug in their device and then close it and set their own combination, then come and unlock it when it's charged up. So kids would put it in the locker, go to lunch, and then come back. They got some use the first year. They got declining amounts of use. We've been in school for 3 weeks now. I'm not sure if the one in the new library that we just built has been used at all. When we did build the new library, we brought in some of the furniture to have charging inside the furniture. So we have like a large couch that has the plugs in it. We built a charging bar so that kids could plug their devices in, keep an eye on them while they're meeting with friends or working in small groups. Many of our teachers have, this is a 1950s built or a 1940s built building, so it has the advantage of being a bomb shelter, but there's not a lot of electricity in it. So as we've been redoing rooms, we've been kind of conscientious about making sure there's enough places in a single classroom where a kid or two can charge. But we didn't make a conscious effort to put power in all of the floors or anything like that. Right. And we do tell the kids, it's your responsibility. If you've got a device that has 3.5 hours of battery life, you've got to plan your break around getting some charge in it for the afternoon, and you're not going to play Angry Birds the entire time. I use that a lot. I'm wondering if Angry Birds is a thing anymore. I may have to find it this year.
Well, if you're going on the cheap, I know not at our school, and I wish we had bought a few of these, but just the multi-outlet power cords that a teacher could roll down the aisle if they needed to, you know, and they can wrap it back up at the end of class is convenient enough, and it gets the job done without having to disrupt, you know, putting in new outlets or anything like that.
Yeah, and the trick is to buy the ones with the 9-foot cords. Like, you're gonna go on Amazon, go on Lowe's or Home Depot, and look for the ones that have the long tails.
Right.
Because there's nothing more frustrating than buying you've got this beautiful 10 outlet power strip and you plug it in and it's 3 feet from the wall. So, we're kind of that buy the 6 or the 9-foot cord and then, do what you need to do to make sure it's not a tripping hazard because fire codes are there for a reason.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. And the other little thing, I mean, right now we have not started school, and I'm walking around to classrooms, and I'm telling the teachers, don't block that outlet, don't block that outlet.
Right.
Because that's something that they tend to do without thinking early on because it looks so nice to put that bookshelf there. But,
yeah, and I had, when I taught middle school, I couldn't block outlets because the kids loved to just sit by the wall,
right.
in the corner or whatever, and they didn't mind sitting on the floor if they were working and things like that. So,
yeah, and you can't knock the power strips. It's amazing. So we're waiting. We've just built this new library, and I've got charging stations coming in, and there's really cool ones. There's a company called Earthwalk, and Earthwalk builds charging stations where built into the charging station is the adapter, is the power adapter made for whatever type of computer you're putting in there, so you don't have to lose your bricks and tie them down. And then they also have very smart charging features that both preserve the battery and don't use electricity when everything is charged. So we're trying to be environmentally conscious. We're trying to save energy. So we buy these cabinets, and then we find out they have a 2.5-month lead time on building them. So, when we started school up, I brought out a cabinet, I stacked laptops on it, I put in 4 power chargers, put it into a 4-plate, and that's charging all of the computers in our learning lab right now. So, right next to where we're charging the robots, we're charging all of the computers on a shelf.
That's great.
I also saw, I was at a Makerspace maybe 2 weekends ago, and they ran those retractable power cables, like you might see on it. Yeah, and they ran them from the drop ceiling, and they could pull them down when they needed them because they, for some reason, couldn't come up from the floor, so they came down from the ceiling. And I thought that was a good idea to solve.
Well, and it's really cost effective too because the cost on a core drill is it can approach $2,000. To drill into the floor and put an outlet in the floor, and you're talking a fraction of that to come in from the ceiling, whether it's a power pole or one of those cords. Well, I've been spending a lot of time with construction, if you can't tell.
Yeah, it sounds like it, and I'm looking at this from the point of view of a teacher walking in. So you're talking about BYOT, and it was really interesting. You said in 1 year's time, you went from about 20% to really the whole student body.
Yeah.
How did you achieve that, and what was the change as far as the school atmosphere?
It's so transformative. So the year before we went BYOT was a pilot year, and then the year before that we were doing a different reflection exercise. We'd gone to every single teacher and we'd said, what do you want? I think we said, what annoys you most about technology in the classroom right now? Try to get all of that answer out of the way. And then, what do you need done next year? And then if you could have anything you wanted in the next 3 years, what would it be? And at the time that we were asking those questions, we didn't think we were going to be this free-for-all environment of any person brings in any device. But that seemed to be where everybody wanted to go. We said there's this idea called BYOT. It's going to be big. We wanted to share it with you, and they were like, yeah, let's go for it. So the next year we revamped our wireless network, built new firewalls, and then said, if you have a device, bring it in. And that was a really great year for us to test all the stuff that we had built and figure out where all of our flaws were. And then the next year we said, okay, we've had a year of experimenting with it, and some of the teachers love it, and some of the teachers are getting used to it, and we're going to go full bore. And because the idea came from teachers, because the idea came from students, we had a lot of buy-in right from the start. We did, my partner in crime, Jen Lemaster, ran BYOT boot camps with all of the departments that were successful as the teachers kind of talked their way through about what would be different, what would be the same, how would the world change. And then a lot of it's a learning experience, because once you get in the classroom, it's totally different.
Yes.
So, finding out that back row is probably not, paying attention to every single word, and you can tell because they have that glazed look on their eye, and they're rapid firing that one space bar.
Now that's a really good point, front of the classroom and teacher location. We have, at least a lot of us have, teachers that are tethered to the front because of their projector and the way their computer is.
Right.
Do you have any way to get teachers to be able to be mobile and still present?
So yeah, we've done a couple of things. The first thing we did, and some of this you can do as you go. Some of this really requires like an investment. The stuff that we started to do as you go was to try and get the teacher enough places around the room where they could plug in and they could run their laptop, and that worked okay. We tried a couple of teachers with mobile carts where the TV could be moved to different walls, but none of it really sold you still had the front of the room. Mm-hmm. So when we did the redesign, we kind of focused on, after we took care of the mobile furniture piece, we said the first thing we were going to do was go multi-screen. So the standard classroom model, Troy, I don't know if I've got any pictures up. Let me see here. As I completely stop talking just to find classroom pictures.
No, I totally understand. I observed a very innovative teacher who, of course, had a normal projector in the classroom, and she just went down to the library and said, well, is it okay if I check out a second one? And the librarian was like, oh, yeah, sure. So basically she had two, and they were on different walls, and it became totally transformative as far as being able to project like student sample work and her instructions and just switching it up all the time. And then her students, actually, she sort of centered herself in the middle, and her students were in sort of a cloverleaf around her. It was very, very innovative. Oh, there you go.
So this is one of our classrooms, and what you can't see, because of course I picked the wrong picture, is on one of these facing walls is a 60-inch TV. And so the teacher is operating from the center of the classroom, and you notice that she's got those flexible tables in the groups. And in this particular lesson, what you can't tell is the student at the podium is working off of his PC laptop, and one of the students, and I used to be able to know which one it was, is working off of a MacBook, and they're both wirelessly sharing their screens onto the projector. And the idea is that she was showing how Mac and PC are different on Turnitin.com, and to let the kids know exactly how to get logged in no matter what browser they were using or what platform they were using. That wireless sharing technology has really been the thing that was probably the most transformative, because it allows the teacher to use, a USB dongle, plug it in, push a button, and they're sharing their screen. And in some of our classrooms, up to 4 kids can share at once. We're not seeing a lot of the group sharing, but we're seeing a lot of you do that presentation, you no longer have to log off one student and wait 2 minutes and log in the other student and find the file. It's just, the next kid up pushes the button on their ClickShare and they're sharing. And so once we did that, we just built 13 more of those classrooms, finished off the upper floor of the school, and one of the social studies teachers came up to me and said, okay, that's a transformative thing. Like, my teaching is different now because I've got multiple screens, because I've got the ability to have kids share, because I can share and move around the classroom and not feel tethered to the front of the room. Our goal is to kill the front of the room concept. That's, and it's strange because lecture has a place. I mean, it's a good way to transfer a lot of information fast, but it's not the most effective model of learning in our institution, and so we're trying to de-emphasize the front of the classroom as much as possible.
I remember you made sort of an infographic or a series of images, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, of which students are engaged and which students aren't, based on, you had like arrows pointing to their finger. If they're using one finger, they're probably playing a game. That kind of thing.
It was it was our BYOT 101. We ran it on our Pinterest page for about a half a year because the teachers were like, "Well, how do you know? Like, what is the magic secret that you can just tell?" And I'm like, and we started talking about it. Like, all the geek teachers got together and we were like, "Well, how do we know? What is it that we're looking for?" And all of a sudden it was like, "Wait, we can actually describe what this is." And so we just started posting pictures, and by the end of it, the kids were like posing. They were like, "Hey, I've got one you can use." So it was a fun professional development project. We got a lot of teachers involved with that.
I think my favorite one. I think my favorite one was when there were two students staring at another student's screen, and it's like nobody's that engaged in someone else's Word document or something like that. And it's like,
I think my favorite one of that is the one of the three girls, and you've got one girl looking at her phone, and you've got one girl who is, like looking at her laptop, and one girl who's doing something else. And it was like the girl looking at her phone is entering the homework assignment into her calendar, and the girl on her tablet was just taking a picture of the notes that were on the board. The girl with the MacBook is doing photo booth, and you can tell because she keeps holding it like this.
I'm actually looking at it as you're describing it. It's perfect.
Send me that link, Joan, and I'll post it with the podcast so that our listeners can see it. Go ahead.
So I was just going to ask the question to go back. What was that again that you're using to screen share with students?
It's from Barco. It's called ClickShare, and it's actually the first year we put it in. It was the most expensive single piece of technology I've ever put in a classroom. Like. And I kept saying, look, we've spent this much money on smartboards. By the way, can you tell I'm not a big smartboard fan? So we put the ClickShare in, and after we put in the ClickShare, we started talking to Barco and talking to some of the manufacturers about what features we really liked, what features we didn't like, and they just released a version that is much, much more affordable. They brought the price down by I think it's within 30% of the original price. You still have the big one that has all of the bells and whistles, but this small one lights up fast, hooks into an HDMI port, which most projectors have now, and is very, very fast on the sharing. You can actually share video through it with almost no lag. Nice. And so all of a sudden it's like, okay, this is now within range of, if you're doing a renovated classroom, if you're buying, a technology for a classroom, a lot of schools will be able to afford this where they couldn't afford the big ClickShare beast without doing, a capital campaign like we did.
Right. Yes. I'm worried about the teacher that's saying, oh, that all sounds great, but, our school can't afford it, and how can I make this work for me? One of the things that is really kind of simple, and I know this sounds, maybe for some people it's obvious, but Google Apps, you can actually grab the student's work and show it on your own because they're sharing it with you. So anything in which you're in a collaborative environment, you're able to share what the student is working on in front of the class.
I'll be interested to see the Chrome bit too. I think the Chrome bit might create some interesting options for sharing displays and things like that.
I worked with a teacher. Now this teacher, the one tricky thing that he did was he was in good with his network administrator, so he was able to get a Chromecast put unfiltered onto their network. So he took a $35 Chromecast, plugged it into an HDMI TV, and they were a Google Apps for Education school, like you said. So the students and the teachers were working on shared collaborative documents. The students would share a presentation with the teacher. The teacher from his Chromebook pushed the Share to Chromecast button, and they were sharing on the HDMI port through the Chromecast. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's a little bit of networking magic you have to do. You've got to sweet talk them into giving you one unfiltered address. But after that, you just did a $35 connection that is so much more effective than even some of the smart TVs that we're seeing that have, limited functionality beyond consuming Netflix or consuming Hulu. So I think there are ways to do this. I had an art teacher who wanted to display student work and wanted to figure out the best way to display student work. And we looked at all sorts of things, digital easels and all sorts of really expensive stuff. And what it came down to is Best Buy was running an open box on like a 27-inch flat panel TV for, $75. So we, got together, we paid the $75, we hooked a Chromecast into it, we created a slideshow, and we ran the slideshow through a Chromebook. And, it became a digital easel in the same way we were looking at it, but it wasn't thousands of dollars, it was, under 200.
Definitely agree that, sometimes you can find these very creative little hacks online, and you'll figure it out. I know way back when smartboards first started, there was a great hack to make a plain old whiteboard into a able to write, and I did it, and it worked great, and I thought I was pretty clever.
Well, I found I think it were 17-inch digital picture frames, and they were on clearance on Amazon, and I got 2 of those and just mounted those in my room. And the bad part is I had to stick in a little SD card, so I had to keep updating the card, but it wasn't horrible, but it's so much easier now to just send stuff to but that was how I got this displayed, because I had teachers who I worked in an elementary school. Everybody's hanging stuff in the hallway, and I'm like, all my work is digital. I don't have anything to hang in the hallway. So
right.
That was my solution.
The other thing that we found, this is more of the broader school perspective and stuff, but I think it would apply to teachers too, is knowing what is cheap and what isn't depending on where you go. And the old geeks in us used to say, you never buy your cords from Best Buy. You buy your equipment from Best Buy and then walk over to Radio Shack and buy the cords. It's still true today. Like if you go into a Best Buy and you buy a mount for a TV that you're going to pay, to hang on a wall, you can pay $30, $40 for some of those mounts. You go to a place online like Monoprice, and not the exact same model, but a very similar model is going to be like $12. And so there's a lot of times where we'll sit there and say, okay, if we want to spend lots of money on something fancy, where are we going to save our money at? And so knowing where some of those cost-cutting things are really help you out. I just went shopping for our Makerspace, and I spent $300, but I think I've filled 3 cabinets worth of stuff, just buying art supplies and tinfoil and fabric swatches and all the stuff that's going to make the Makerspace really take off. But it was just like deal shopping on Amazon.
You were going to talk a little bit about your Makerspace too. Maybe tell us kind of that, again, classroom configuration or space configuration that is going to work well.
Well, as we were building the library, and I will say that we were a year into the design process of a new library. We called our Information Commons, and I went to ISTE and took 2 workshops on Makerspaces, and came away from that and had major redesigns to our digital citizenship class that all of our freshmen take. But then in the back of my head, I'm like, how can we build a library in this day and age and not include some place where kids can be creative and build and make and do something? And so we turned one of our small group collaboration rooms into a Makerspace. From a structural point of view, we added cabinets and 1 table and a couple of network drops and a little bit more power and hung a whiteboard. From a creative point of view, we just started finding things that we could deck it out with. And so this summer's biggest discovery was done by 2 of the students who were working for me while we were wiring some of the classrooms. And they came in and said, hey, have you seen Google Cardboard? I'm like, I've seen it. I haven't played with it much. And they're like, we should totally get a pair for the summer. I'm like, okay. I'll order a pair of Google Cardboard. We found one on Amazon. I think it was like $15. Ordered Google Cardboard. One of the kids came in and said, "Hey, look, I made Google Cardboard out of cardboard," and made his own. And so we started playing around with it, and the kids were all excited and saying this totally has to be in the Makerspace. And I said, well, I like the idea of it being in the Makerspace. It's fun, it's creative, but I really want us to create with it. I don't want it to just be consumptive. And the kids went out on their own and found out that you can make 3D virtual environments for Google Cardboard using Unity 3D, which is the same gaming software that they play on their Xboxes. And Unity 3D is free.
Yes, it
and
is.
you can apply for an educational license and get licenses for your school and put them on the computer. And I'm like, well, we just put our first computer into the Makerspace because we're going to have a Makerspace computer. We're going to put Unity 3D on it. We're going to put it right next to the Google Cardboard. And your job is to give me a 3D walkthrough of the school. And so they haven't built it yet, but that's one of the projects the Maker Club is working on.
Brilliant.
And our grand total so far is $25 and a computer.
Brilliant. And I do want to point out, too, if you want to take it down to a lower grade level, they can do photospheres at a younger grade level and look at those on the Google Cardboard as well. So
and Photosphere is like the unsung hero of the Nexus 7. I mean, you take any of the newer Android phones and you can do this Photosphere, and nobody talks about it, but it is so cool.
Yes, it's right there. It's built in to the Nexus. Yes.
One of the so we did that. We've been using Makey boards for our digital citizenship class, and they're not. I'm always like, you spend a lot of money on an Arduino board that isn't really that expensive, that has fewer features than our Arduino board. But there is something about a kid who's never done programming before that you give them Scratch, which is free. And a $50 board that can turn, a banana into a piano, and they can come up with cool things. We've done the carnival games for the last 2 years with all of our digital citizenship kids, and I'm amazed at the creativity that they show with just a few hours of training in Scratch.
It's crazy how fast they learn that. And I always feel like the adults are very intimidated to bring Scratch in because they're like, I don't know anything about programming, but they really don't need to know anything. I mean, the simple tutorials that are out there would get the kids started and just let the kids go.
I got Sylvia's super awesome project book or whatever that it's called.
I got volume 2. I haven't read it yet, but
and it's got, I think, 4 or 5 projects in it, and that's what I told our teachers at the beginning of the year. I'm trying to get them to use more Arduinos and do more programming. And I said, if you don't know how to use one of these, here's a book by a 14-year-old girl who has. just look at some of these projects, and that at least gets you started. And then once you get the kids started, they'll take it from there.
I was going to show, this is my Instagram feed, but this is from our digital citizenship class, and these are the games they made. So you've got your classic duck hunt. This is a jumping game. A couple of them tried to make hammer games. One of them did that pancake game that is so annoying on the iPhone, and they created a pancake game using an actual pan that was covered in tinfoil, and then you flipped virtually the waffle. And then there's the controllers that they made.
Oh, fun. And this is with a Makey board?
These are all Makey board projects. So this is the duck hunt game with the container inside has the directional controls for the Nerf gun that's wrapped up here in tinfoil. You've got the pie toss game where put your hand here. This is a hammer throw game like the strength hammer, and then whack a shark was one of my favorites.
How many? Just a quick question. How many Makeys would I need to do a project like that with a class?
For that one, we used 4 Makey boards. My wife just turned off my light on me. I gotta find my heat map here. So we used 4, and then they would trade them around. We just made the requirement that you have to build it so that the Makey board can be put away each day. We're up to 10 Makey boards in the school, and I'm trying to decide how to split it up between the learning lab where we're actually going to teach the class and the Makerspace where we don't want to control the kids. We bought some Raspberry Pis, and we're doing the same thing. We've got some in the learning lab and some in the Makerspace.
And I like that you said they have to put it away. So if I'm a teacher in a classroom and really I want to do a makerspace, but I don't have any other place but my classroom, it is possible, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
To do something where they're tearing everything out and then they can put it all away. And I think
Yeah.
a lot of it is if you can box things well. I know they get very frustrated if they've wired up an Arduino and they're like, I don't want to have to take that apart. But if you
Right.
can just put it all together into one box, shoe boxes are wonderful for Arduinos.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we, it was a discussion. We're a private school, and so we have you have the board of trustees, and you have a president, and so we're constantly in the state of negotiation. So one of the great big negotiating points was, yes, you're going to get your makerspace, but we want cabinets, we want doors put on the cabinets. And I'm going, no, makerspace has doors. It's all plastic tubs. Don't do this to me. But the doors are on the cabinets now, and it looks really good. But then it was a matter of going, okay, what plastic tubs can I buy that I can store these cabinets in part because one whole shelf is projects that are in progress. So it's the kids who are building a Mindstorms that's going to take them a couple of days to a couple of weeks to put together, and I have no problem with them spending the time to build it, but I needed a place where they could store it so it wasn't sitting out on the table and making the Board of Trustees feel icky inside. So buying the plastic containers or the shoe boxes that you can store stuff in is huge. From that, and just from an organizational standpoint, because it would make anybody pull their hair out if you had, the Play-Doh mixing with the Raspberry Pi, heaven forbid.
When we were planning our makerspace, I visited a community makerspace that was pretty well established, and one thing I hadn't thought of that they said was probably their biggest obstacle is probably 75% of their space was storage.
Yeah.
And they collected things that they didn't know if they'd ever use, but they needed them available if they needed them. And
yeah, I am, and this is wrong foot frame. This is ours, and again, clearly I just bought stuff for it, so it's not in there yet, but. In our, within this space, you can see join the MakerBot Club, so the kids are starting to put the word out. Right now we've got a couple of Hummingbird kits, and that's actually one of those like Walmart Lego bricks with 200 Lego parts. There's our Google Cardboard and the Hummingbird on the second shelf. I'm sitting here moving my mouse as if you guys can see it. I can't remember if we can or not.
We can.
This is one 7-inch screen and then 6 Raspberry Pis that we bought. And I've got a couple of jumping sumos and a couple of Spheros on this shelf too. And then this is going to be the art supply closet. And then this is all the sandpaper and the blue tape and the isopropyl alcohol that we use for the 3D printer. We have the MakerBot here and a MakerBot scanner here, and then this is the computer for the Unity. And so that's our makerspace.
And do the kids bring their own devices in there as well?
Yeah, it's the entire place. You can bring your own device. So we're not. We really tried to make. There's our Mindstorm robots for our robot class. We really try to make it so that we're not telling the kids what to do. The makerspace is this room right here, and then this is kind of the common area for the new information commons.
Nice.
And we'll talk off air, but I'm trying to find a way to charge all 10 of my Spheros at the same time because the plug is not a standard plug, and so it doesn't fit in a standard. Only 2 of them fit in a standard power strip, and I'm like, how am I supposed to do this? So we'll talk off air about some ideas you might be able to help me with. But
One of those alligator.
if a teacher, because I went to a mini maker or like a maker summit a couple weeks ago, and there was one teacher there. She was just like, I can't get my school to start a makerspace, but I want to do a section in my classroom as a makerspace.
Awesome.
What tools could a teacher get to just start a small makerspace in a section of their classroom?
And I would I'm amazed. Like, we started with Makey boards, so like a single Makey board and a roll of tinfoil and a couple of pieces of cardboard can do wonders. I really am into the idea of Play-Doh and construction paper and markers. I cannot stress enough that we don't do enough art with our kids, and give them a chance to be creative. Mindstorms is probably a little out of the price range of a lot of teachers at this point, which is too bad. I wish we could bring the price on Mindstorms down a little, or create a smaller version of Mindstorms. I personally don't really like the cost point on SnapBits either, but that's another kind of introductory robot programming tool that you're seeing.
I'll
Ultimately,
interject. I'll interject one that I think is inexpensive and it's definitely worth looking at are the circuit scribe pens.
oh, you're right.
Metallic,
Those are, yeah.
and they are not expensive. And you get a few batteries and light bulbs along with that and have a blast and some
Yeah.
foil. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I like about like these pens. And for those of you who haven't played with them, I mean, literally, she's right. It's liquid metal. You just like draw your circuits, and then you can play with them. Those are great. Trying to think, so many of this stuff, it all comes down to how much money do you have to spend, and then what's the best way to spend it. I've seen, the original MakerBots were thousands and thousands of dollars. The school deal on a printer bot now is, I think, $600 gets you a full printer bot with, with your starter ink and everything else. So you have a 3D printer for $600. Printerbot wants to put a 3D printer in every school, and they're trying to price it so that you can. So there's lots of options for the teacher who just wants to put something in their corner, and you get that first 3D printer into your building, and you're not far away from having multiple ones because people see the change that happens when kids are designing and creating their own stuff.
Well, I've just been taking a list of things that we've talked about, and a lot. We've talked about a multitude of things that our listeners are going to find helpful. JD, how can our listeners find you if they want to communicate with you or find out more about what you're doing? Where can they find you?
Sure, I'm JD Ferris just about everywhere. So if you want to hit me up on Twitter, I'm JD Ferris, JDFERRIES. I'm JD Ferris on Instagram. I'm jdferris@gmail.com for Hangouts. And I did what I could to try and own that link. So that's by far the easiest way to get a hold of me, or the one that I'm pay attention that my focus is on the most is Twitter. And then I blog at geekreflections.blogspot.com, but I am a sporadic blogger. I had 1 year where I was obsessed with it, and then ever since then it's like, oh wait, I haven't blogged in 6 months.
We forgive you.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot for your time, JD. I think a lot of what we talked about will help a lot of teachers in their quest to become more digital in their classrooms. So.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right,
and
thanks.
to listeners, we'll talk to you again soon.